You've felt it before, haven't you? That moment when you're standing in front of people who should have your back, and instead you feel the cold vacuum of indifference wrapping around you like a fog. Maybe it's a meeting at work where you present an idea, and the silence that follows is so thick you can almost taste it. Or maybe it's that family gathering where you share something you're proud of, and everyone suddenly finds their phones incredibly interesting. Your chest tightens, your throat goes dry, and that voice in your head, that cruel, relentless voice, starts whispering the same old poison. You've always been alone. So what do? You do what you've been trained to do since childhood. You try harder. You explain yourself more. You add details, context, justifications. You perform like a circus animal, hoping someone, anyone, will throw you a scrap of validation. And with every word that comes out of your mouth, you feel yourself shrinking. You see it in their eyes, that subtle shift from indifference to something worse. Pity mixed with contempt. They've got you exactly where they want you, begging for scraps of approval like a starving dog under the table. And here's the thing that kills you inside. You know you're doing it. You can feel yourself losing power with every desperate word, but you can't stop. It's like watching yourself drown in slow motion, fully aware but completely helpless. If you've lived this nightmare, if you know exactly what it feels like to stand alone in a room full of people, if you're exhausted from trying to earn support that never comes, then stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will flip everything you think you know about power on its head. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. How many times have you walked into a situation expecting support, expecting someone to stand beside you, only to find yourself completely alone? How many times have you felt that gut-wrenching realization that the people you counted on have either disappeared or worse? They're standing with the crowd against you. And in that moment, in that horrible, crystalline moment of clarity, you felt not just alone, but fundamentally defective. Like there's something broken in you that makes you unworthy of loyalty, unworthy of backup, unworthy of someone choosing your side. If this has happened to you, if you know this specific flavor of abandonment, I want you to do something right now. Go down to the comments and write these 4 words. I stood alone before. That's it. No explanation needed. No details required unless you want to share them. Just those 4 words. Because here's what happens when you do that. You break the spell of isolation. You see hundreds, maybe thousands of other people writing the exact same thing, and suddenly that story you've been telling yourself, that story about being uniquely flawed and uniquely alone, it starts to crack. You realize this isn't about you being defective. This is about you never being taught the most dangerous truth about power. That isolation is not your weakness, it's your hidden advantage. Real power grows fastest in the soil of total isolation, and once you understand why, you'll never beg for backup again. So go ahead, write it in the comments. I stood alone before. Let that be your first step toward understanding what I'm about to reveal. Now let me take you somewhere most people are too afraid to go. Let me take you into the real mechanics of how power operates in the human hierarchy. What I'm about to tell you contradicts everything you've been taught about strength in numbers, about the power of community, about finding your tribe. And it contradicts those things because those lessons were designed to keep you weak, to keep you dependent, to keep you seeking permission and validation from the herd. Here's the truth that Niccolo Machiavelli understood 500 years ago when he wrote The Prince. And it's the same truth that Robert Greene decoded in his masterwork, The 48 Laws of Power. The moment you depend on others for your power, you've already lost it. Not because people are inherently evil or disloyal, though many are, but because dependence creates vulnerability, and vulnerability in the game of power is a death sentence. Think about it. When you have a support system, what are you really doing? You're outsourcing your strength. You're saying to the world, I need these people to validate my position, to confirm my worth, to give me courage. And everyone around you, especially those who play the game well, they see that. They see your dependency like a neon sign flashing weakness here. They know that if they want to break you, they don't have to attack you directly. They just have to isolate you from your support, and you'll collapse on your own. This is exactly what happens in corporate environments, in social circles, in families. Everywhere humans gather to compete for resources and status. The power players don't waste energy fighting you head-on. They whisper. They plant seeds of doubt. They create distance between you and the people you rely on. And one by one, your support evaporates, and you're left standing there wondering what happened, wondering why everyone abandoned you, never realizing you were playing a rigged game from the start. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the dark psychology of true power reveals itself. When you have no support, when you're forced to stand completely alone, something chemical happens in your brain. The same mechanism that creates panic and desperation in the weak creates ruthless clarity in those who understand the game. You stop performing for an audience. You stop seeking approval. You stop wasting energy on managing relationships and political alliances. All that energy, all that mental bandwidth you used to spend on maintaining your support network, it suddenly becomes available for one thing: raw execution. You become dangerous because you have nothing to lose and no one to disappoint. You become unpredictable because you're not constrained by group consensus or the fear of losing allies. You become sovereign because your power no longer depends on the fickle loyalty of others. Let me give you a concrete example from the world of business. Steve Jobs, when he was ousted from Apple in 1985, lost everything: his company, his team, his support system, his reputation. He was alone in a way that would destroy most people. And what did he do? Did he beg for his old allies to come back? Did he spend years trying to rebuild his network? No. He built NXT and Pixar in complete isolation from the Apple ecosystem, and he built them so well that Apple had to beg him to come back. His isolation forced him to develop a level of strategic clarity and execution that he never could have achieved while managing the politics of support. Or, look at the political realm. Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War was surrounded by a cabinet of rivals, men who openly despised him and worked against him. He had virtually no genuine support in his own government, and yet he wielded more power than any of them, precisely because his lack of support forced him to develop an unshakable internal compass and an ability to act decisively without consensus. This is the pattern that repeats throughout history. The most transformative power comes from those who were forced to stand alone. But this isn't just about historical figures or business titans. This applies to you, right now, in your daily life. Think about the last time you tried to make a change, tried to set a boundary, tried to pursue something that mattered to you. What happened? You probably started by seeking support. You told people your plans. You looked for validation. You wanted someone to say, "Yes, I believe in you, I've got your back." And what did you get? At best, lukewarm encouragement. At worst, active sabotage disguised as concern. Are you sure that's a good idea? Have you really thought this through? What if it doesn't work out? And their doubt became your doubt. Their fear became your fear. Their limitations became your limitations. This is the insidious nature of seeking support. It almost always pulls you down to the lowest common denominator of belief and ambition. Now contrast that with what happens when you accept your isolation completely. When you stop seeking support and start operating from a place of total self-reliance. First, you stop telegraphing your moves. You learn the power of silence, of keeping your plans to yourself until they're already in motion. This is law number 3 from Robert Greene. Conceal your intentions. When you have no support to share your ideas with, you naturally become more strategic about what you reveal and when. Second, you develop what the Stoics called self-sufficiency of the soul. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you have no external support, you're forced to find that internal power source. You stop looking outside yourself for strength and start excavating it from within. Third, and this is crucial, you become immune to the primary weapons of social manipulation, withdrawal of approval, and threat of isolation. Think about it. What power does someone have over you if they threaten to abandon you, and you're already alone? What leverage do they have if they threaten to turn others against you, and you have no allies to lose? You become like water, formless and unstoppable, because there's nothing to grab onto, nothing to break. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice, in everyday situations where most people crumble. You're in a meeting, and you propose something unconventional. The room goes silent. Nobody backs you up. Old you would panic, would start backtracking, would dilute your idea to make it more palatable, more acceptable. New you, the you who has embraced isolation, you sit in that silence. You let it stretch. You watch them squirm. You know that silence is not rejection, it's calculation. They're trying to figure out if they can safely oppose you without looking foolish later if your idea succeeds. And because you're not scrambling for their approval, because you're not performing the weakness dance of justification, your certainty in the absence of support becomes more powerful than their collective doubt. Or take a social situation. You're at a gathering, and someone makes a subtle dig at you, testing your boundaries. Everyone laughs, including people you thought were your friends. Old, you would either laugh along, pretending it didn't hurt, or you'd defend yourself, explaining why the dig was unfair, seeking validation from the group. New you does neither. You simply look at the person who took the shot, hold eye contact for a moment longer than is comfortable, and then you move the conversation forward as if they don't exist. No defense, no explanation, no seeking support from others, just complete indifference to their attempt to diminish you. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It's better to be feared than loved." Not feared in the sense of being cruel or aggressive, but feared in the sense of being unpredictable, untouchable, immune to the social games that control everyone else. Here's the part that most people never understand about power dynamics. Support is not strength, it's debt. Every time someone supports you, you owe them something. Maybe it's loyalty. Maybe it's a future favor. Maybe it's the obligation to support their mediocre ideas even when you know they're wrong. This is how alliances work. They're not built on genuine loyalty. They're built on mutual self-interest and accumulated debt. And the more support you have, the more debts you carry, the more constrained you become. You can't make the bold move because it might alienate ally A. You can't speak the truth because it might offend supporter B. You can't pursue your actual vision because it conflicts with the agenda of coalition C. You become a prisoner of your own support system. But when you have no support, you have no debts. You owe no one anything. You're free to move in any direction, to pivot instantly, to pursue strategies that would be impossible if you had to maintain a network of supporters. This is why lone wolves in any competitive environment are so dangerous. They're not dangerous because they're isolated. They're dangerous because isolation has made them free. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but humans are social creatures. We need connection. We need community. And you're right, but you're confusing two different things. You're confusing emotional connection with strategic support. Emotional connection, genuine friendship, love, those are beautiful and necessary for a meaningful life. But they have nothing to do with power. In fact, the strongest friendships and the deepest loves are the ones that exist completely independent of power dynamics. They're the relationships where neither person needs anything from the other, where there's no debt, no obligation, no strategic value. Those relationships are rare and precious. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about support systems. When people say, build your network, or find your tribe, or you need people in your corner, they're talking about strategic alliances designed to amplify your power or protect your position. And those alliances, no matter how they're dressed up in the language of friendship and loyalty, are fundamentally transactional. They exist because both parties get something from the arrangement. And the moment the value proposition changes, the support evaporates. This is why you need to develop what I call strategic isolation. Not loneliness, not antisocial behavior, but the disciplined practice of never depending on others for your power, your worth, or your ability to execute. You maintain relationships, you enjoy connections, you collaborate when it serves your purpose. But underneath it all, you remain fundamentally self-reliant. You know that if every single person in your life disappeared tomorrow, you would not only survive, you would thrive. Because your power comes from within, from your skills, from your knowledge, from your will, from your clarity of vision. Everything else is decoration. This is what the ancient Stoics practiced. This is what every master strategist throughout history has understood. This is what separates those who rule from those who follow. Let me show you the practical mechanics of how to build this kind of power. First, you need to audit your current dependencies. Look at your life honestly and ask, where am I outsourcing my strength? Are you waiting for someone to validate your decision before you act? Are you hesitating on a move because you don't have backup? Are you modifying your vision to keep certain people comfortable? Write it down, all of it. Every place where you've made your power conditional on someone else's approval or support. Second, you need to practice small acts of isolation. Start making decisions without consulting anyone. Not big, life-changing decisions at first, just small things. Choose something you want to do and do it without seeking input, without building consensus, without creating a safety net of supporters. Notice what happens in your body when you do this. Notice the anxiety, the feeling that you're doing something wrong by not including others. Sit with that discomfort. That discomfort is your dependency showing itself. Third, you need to develop your execution capability independent of others. This means building skills, accumulating knowledge, creating systems that work, whether you have support or not. If you're an entrepreneur, that means being able to build, market, and sell your product yourself, even if it would be easier with a team. If you're in a corporate environment, it means being able to deliver results without relying on colleagues or subordinates. If you're in a social or family context, it means being able to maintain your boundaries and pursue your goals regardless of who approves. Fourth, and this is where most people fail, you need to embrace the emotional reality of isolation. There will be moments when standing alone feels terrible, when you watch everyone else in the group nodding along with something you know is wrong, and you have to decide whether to speak up and face their collective opposition or stay silent and betray yourself. Most people choose silence because the pain of isolation is greater than the pain of self-betrayal. You need to reverse that equation. You need to make the pain of abandoning your truth greater than the pain of standing alone. This requires deep internal work. It requires you to build an unshakable sense of self that doesn't depend on external validation. The Stoics called this the development of your ruling faculty, your internal compass that guides you regardless of circumstances. Marcus Aurelius again. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. Fifth, you need to understand and master the shadow side of this power, because here's the danger. When you become powerful through isolation, when you stop needing others, you can become cruel. You can become callous. You can start viewing people as chess pieces rather than humans. This is the trap that catches many who walk this path. They confuse self-reliance with misanthropy. They confuse strategic isolation with emotional disconnection. Don't make this mistake. The goal is not to become a sociopath. The goal is to become sovereign. Sovereign means you rule yourself completely. You depend on no one for your power, but you're still capable of connection, still capable of empathy, still capable of genuine care for others. The difference is that your care comes from abundance, not need. You choose to connect because you want to, not because you have to. You choose to help because it aligns with your values, not because you're seeking approval or building alliances. This shadow work is crucial because power without wisdom becomes tyranny, and tyranny eventually destroys itself. Look at every dictator, every corporate tyrant, every toxic personality who accumulated power through fear and manipulation. They all fall eventually, not because they weren't powerful, but because they didn't understand that sustainable power requires not just strength, but also restraint, not just domination, but also discernment. You need to cultivate what Nietzsche called master morality, the ability to define your own values independent of the herd. But you also need the wisdom to know when to wield your power and when to hold back. This is the true mastery, having the capability to dominate, but choosing not to unless absolutely necessary. Now, let me give you a framework for the next 7 days. This is your isolation power challenge. Day 1. Make one decision today without consulting anyone. Not a huge decision, just something you would normally seek input on. Make it yourself and act on it immediately. Day 2. Sit in silence for 30 minutes. No music, no podcast, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. Notice what emerges when you're truly alone with yourself. Day 3. Set one boundary that you've been afraid to set because you thought it would cost you support. Set it firmly, clearly, and without apology. Watch what happens. Day 4. Do something you've been wanting to do but held back from because you had no support for it. Do it alone, completely alone. Day 5. Identify one relationship where you've been performing for approval and stop performing. Just be neutral, be yourself, and let the chips fall where they may. Day 6. Spend the entire day as if you had no one to impress, no one to please, no one to seek validation from. Move through your day as a completely sovereign being. Day 7. Reflect on the week. Write down what you learned about yourself, about your dependencies, about where your real power lives. This challenge will be uncomfortable. It will bring up fear, loneliness, doubt. That's the point. You need to walk through those feelings and discover what's on the other side. What's on the other side is freedom. What's on the other side is power that no one can take from you. What's on the other side is the realization that you never needed their support in the first place. You just needed the courage to stand alone. Here's what happens when you complete this transformation, when you truly internalize that your power grows fastest in isolation. You stop being desperate. Desperation is the scent of weakness, and predators in the social hierarchy can smell it from miles away. When you're desperate for support, for approval, for backup, you make terrible decisions. You align with the wrong people. You compromise on things that matter. You betray yourself in small ways that accumulate into a fundamental loss of identity. But when you're not desperate, when you know you're fine either way, with or without their support, you become selective. You become strategic. You choose your battles. You choose your alliances. And most importantly, you never ever sacrifice your sovereignty for the illusion of backup. People sense this shift in you. They feel it even if they can't articulate it. and their behavior toward you changes. The ones who were taking advantage of your need for approval either disappear or adjust their approach. The ones who are genuinely aligned with you become clearer. And new people, stronger people, people who respect power, they start appearing in your orbit. Not because you're seeking them out, but because power attracts power. Sovereignty attracts sovereignty. This is the final truth about power and isolation. You don't need to seek support. When you become truly powerful through self-reliance, support seeks you. But by then, you're wise enough to know the difference between genuine alliance and opportunistic parasitism. You're strong enough to accept help without becoming dependent on it. You're clear enough to build teams and communities without losing yourself in them. This is mastery. This is what it means to rule yourself so completely that ruling others becomes irrelevant. Because when you stand alone and discover you're still standing, when you build power from nothing but your own will and capability, when you learn to sleep soundly with no one watching your back because you've become your own fortress, then you've accessed something most people never even know exists: true freedom. And freedom, real freedom, is the ultimate power. Not freedom from responsibility or consequence, but freedom from need, from dependency, from the weakness of requiring external validation to know your worth. So if you made it this far, if something in this video resonated with that part of you that's tired of begging for scraps of support, tired of performing for approval that never comes, tired of feeling weak because you stand alone, then I want you to understand something. You're not broken. You're not damaged. You're not fundamentally flawed. You're just finally waking up to a truth that the herd doesn't want you to know. Isolation is not your curse. It's your crucible. It's where the weak break and the strong are forged. And you have a choice right now. You can close this video and go back to seeking support that will never truly come. Or you can take what you learned here and start building real power, the kind that comes from within, the kind that doesn't evaporate when everyone leaves the room. If you choose the second path, if you're ready to stop being dependent and start being dangerous, then subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because every week I bring you content like this, strategies and insights that cut through the comfortable lies and show you how power actually works. Not the sanitized version they teach you in school, but the raw, uncomfortable truth that separates those who lead from those who follow. And if this video helped you see something differently, if it gave you even one insight that made the isolation you've been feeling hurt a little less, hit that like button. Let other people who need this message find it. Because there are thousands of people out there right now, standing alone, thinking they're weak, thinking there's something wrong with them, when the truth is, they're closer to real power than they've ever been. They just need someone to tell them that standing alone is not the end of the story, it's the beginning. See you in the next video, and remember, you never needed their support. You just needed to remember your own strength.